Lycan King's son kicks Waitress unaware she's a lethal fighter. What happened next silenced all. Its wooden sign swung with a faint creak in the chilly evening wind, announcing the Silver Lantern. Inside, the warm glow of lanterns painted the rough-hewn walls in amber light. The chatter of weary travelers mixed with the clink of mugs and the faint smell of roasted meat. Yet in the corner of this modest tavern, destiny was quietly taking shape. Saris moved with practiced ease among the tables, her dark hair pulled back tightly, her eyes always scanning. She was a waitress, yes, and her appearance seemed ordinary, plain tunic, simple boots, but she carried herself with a grace that betrayed years of discipline. Every movement was deliberate, every step quiet. Most patrons hardly noticed her, thinking her just another humble servant. But those trained in the arts of combat, those who could read the signs of a lethal fighter, would have recognized the coiled strength beneath her calm exterior. The door burst open, letting in a sharp gust of wind and the scent of cold stone from the street. Heads turned as a man entered, tall and commanding even before anyone caught sight of his face. Kalen, son of the Lycan king, strode into the room with an ease born of privilege. His dark eyes scanned the tavern, sharp and calculating. Every step he took carried authority, though he attempted to hide it behind a casual swagger. He wore simple traveler's clothes, but the aura of nobility could not be disguised. Kalen had grown up among whispers and shadows, learning early that power demanded attention. The people of the kingdom feared the Lycan blood in him, a curse and a blessing both, marking him as different from mortal men. Tonight he sought the anonymity of a tavern, a place where no one knew his name, where he could taste the freedom of ordinary life, if only for a few hours. Saris carried a tray of steaming stew to a nearby table, keeping her eyes forward. She did not notice the prince's gaze at first. She rarely looked up at anyone when working. But when Kaelin's eyes finally met hers, the room seemed to shrink. There was an intensity in his gaze that made her pause mid-step. Not fear, no. Saris was not easily afraid, but a subtle warning pulse ran through her veins, the instinct of someone who had lived her life expecting danger at every turn. "Watch where you're going," Kaelin said suddenly, his voice smooth yet edged with impatience. His tone was not harsh, but it carried the weight of someone used to command. He had brushed past her as she stepped to the side, thinking little of the encounter. Saris blinked. Her lips pressed into a thin line, hiding the flicker of irritation that rose like a spark in her chest. Most people would have said nothing, would have swallowed pride. But she did not react immediately, not with words. Her body tensed for the briefest heartbeat, as though weighing whether this man was a threat. Then, in a controlled motion, she stepped aside, offering a polite nod. Kaelin smirked, mistaking her restraint for submission. "Careful," he said, leaning casually against a table. "The streets aren't kind to those who stumble." Saris's eyes narrowed just slightly. There was a challenge in her look, quiet, subtle, but impossible to ignore. Kaelin noticed it, though he did not understand its full meaning. Something about her was different. He was used to fear, to obedience, to the careful deference of the common folk. But here was someone who moved with control, who did not flinch under his presence, who might even meet his arrogance with her own. The night continued, the tavern slowly filling with patrons seeking warmth from the chill outside. Kaelin ordered a drink and watched from his corner, observing the movements of the people around him. He was a predator in a forest of mortals, but there was a spark of curiosity in his gaze now, aimed squarely at the lone waitress who moved among them. Saris returned to her work, delivering food and drinks with practiced efficiency. She did not glance at him again, not yet, though she could feel his attention like a weight on her back. She was used to being observed, but this was different. This presence felt alive, dangerous, yet somehow magnetic. As the hour grew late, the tavern began to thin. Patrons left, bidding farewell to friends and to the warmth that only flickering lanterns could provide. Saris finally allowed herself a brief moment to rest, leaning against the bar to wipe her hands on her apron. She exhaled slowly, releasing the tension that had remained coiled since her first shift. Kalen approached the bar, his steps deliberate, drawing her attention. "You're quick," he said, his voice low, almost a murmur meant only for her. Most would have spilled half the drinks by now. Saris raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "I have to be," she replied evenly, her voice calm but firm. "It's part of the job." "Part of the job," he repeated, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Or part of the person." Saris paused. Something in his tone, something in the way he studied her, made her instinctively cautious. She sensed a hidden depth in him, a layered complexity she had learned to recognize after years of dealing with unpredictable threats. "The job is enough," she said finally, returning to her tasks. Kalen leaned closer, curiosity piqued. There was a spark in this woman, a flame he could not quite reach. She was strong yet disciplined, quiet yet present in a way that pulled attention without demanding it. He had met nobles, warriors, even mages, but none had stirred this strange fascination within him. Before either could speak again, the door to the tavern slammed open with a violent gust, and a group of shadowy figures slipped inside. They moved like whispers of smoke, silent yet deadly. The tavern fell into chaos. Patrons screamed and ducked under tables, chairs overturned, and the smell of fear filled the air. Kalen's eyes sharpened, instincts kicking in. He rose swiftly, revealing his true nature as his pupils narrowed into golden slits. The shadowy figures advanced, and without hesitation, Sarah stepped forward. In a single fluid motion, she knocked a chair aside and intercepted one of the attackers. Her movements were precise, calculated, almost like a dance, each strike deliberate, each block anticipating the enemy. Kalen's surprise gave way to respect. This woman, whom he had thought ordinary, was extraordinary. She moved with deadly grace, her eyes sharp, her mind calculating every threat and every opportunity. In that moment, the arrogance he usually carried melted into fascination and wariness. The fight escalated, the shadowy attackers relentless, but Kalen and Saris moved together, an unspoken rhythm guiding them. She anticipated his movements, he adapted to hers, and together they carved a path through the chaos. The tavern's warmth seemed to retreat before the storm of their combined skill, yet neither faltered. Finally, with the last attacker sent fleeing into the night, silence fell over the room. Broken chairs and spilled drinks littered the floor. Patrons peeked out from hiding, their eyes wide with awe. Kalen's gaze found Saris, and he saw her not as a waitress, not as someone beneath his notice, but as a force of nature. There was power in her restraint, in her skill, in the quiet confidence she radiated. She met his eyes and said nothing, only offering a slight nod before returning to her tasks as if nothing had happened. But Kalen knew better. Something had shifted in that instant, a recognition, a challenge, a connection that neither could fully name yet. As the night wore on, Saris closed the tavern, sweeping the floor and counting coins with meticulous care. She felt the lingering awareness of him behind her, even as he lingered by the door, watching, not interfering. Kalen had never met someone like her, someone who could fight without fear, who could hold herself steady in the eye of danger, and who seemed untouchable even as she moved through the mortal world with ease. The city outside was quiet now, the streets slick with rain and shadow. Kalen finally stepped into the night, his cloak brushing against the cobblestones. He did not speak to her, but his eyes lingered, following her as she disappeared into the shadows of the alleyway. Something unspoken had passed between them, a spark that neither could ignore. Saris paused, sensing the weight of his gaze even when he was gone. A faint smile touched her lips, though she would not admit to anyone, not even herself, that the encounter had unsettled her in a way few ever could. There was a storm coming, one that neither of them fully understood, and yet somehow they were drawn to it, to each other, to the danger, to the possibility of something neither had dared hope for. And in the distance, the faint howl of wolves echoed through the city, a reminder of the Lycan blood that ran through Kaelin's veins. Cliffhanger. Neither Saris nor Kaelin knew it yet, but the night had only just begun. Forces beyond their understanding were moving, testing them, pushing them together. By sunrise, their worlds would collide in ways that would change them both forever. The dawn broke over the city like a cautious promise. The streets, still wet from the night's rain, glimmered under the first pale light. Smoke rose from chimneys, mingling with the faint mist that clung to the cobblestones. Inside the silver lantern, the remnants of the previous night's chaos lay scattered: broken chairs, overturned mugs, and scorched marks on the wooden floor. Saris moved silently, tidying the tavern with the same calm efficiency that had carried her through the fight. Her muscles still ached from the sudden clash, and her mind replayed the golden eyes of Kaelin, the Lycan prince, watching her with a mixture of fascination and surprise. She did not understand why his presence lingered in her thoughts like a shadow that would not fade. Kaelin, however, did not return to the tavern that morning. Instead, he walked the quiet streets, his mind troubled. The night had revealed more than he had anticipated. Saris was no ordinary woman. She was strong, capable, and unflinching in the face of danger. And yet there was more, a depth in her gaze that suggested she carried secrets, ones that might challenge even a prince of Lycans. He could not deny the curiosity that tugged at him. Her restraint during the fight, her calculated moves, and the calm she maintained in the chaos, all hinted at someone who had trained not just in skill, but in discipline, purpose, and survival. Kaelin was drawn to that, even as a part of him warned of the dangers of underestimating her. Meanwhile, Saris returned to her small lodgings, a modest room above the tavern. She lit a single candle, its flickering light reflecting off the walls lined with books and old, worn weapons she had carefully hidden. Each weapon was a testament to her training, a reminder of the path she had chosen, a life of readiness, of strength, of solitude. She had survived by keeping to herself, by trusting no one, and by remaining unseen in a world that would have underestimated her. Yet, the memory of Kaelin's gaze lingered. His presence had stirred something within her, a mixture of intrigue and caution. She did not allow herself to dwell on it. Distractions were dangerous, and she had learned that distractions often led to vulnerability. Still, she could not ignore the sense that their meeting was no accident. Something about the night, about the sudden attack, hinted at a larger design. As the morning passed, news began to spread across the city. A curse had fallen upon the capital, one that caused several citizens to fall into unnatural slumber. People awoke only to find themselves exhausted, drained of strength, and haunted by vivid, troubling visions. The city's healers were baffled, and fear spread as rapidly as the mysterious ailment. Kaelin learned of the curse through urgent messages delivered by his aides. The Lycan king himself had sent word. The curse was tied to their bloodline, a dark magic lingering from the kingdom's ancient past. It had awakened during the night, and the prince's involvement had been anticipated, perhaps even orchestrated. When Kaelin returned to the silver lantern, he found Saris already there, listening intently to the chatter of worried citizens and recording observations in a small, leather-bound notebook. She had spent the night tracking the strange energies in the city, noticing patterns that others would have missed. Her mind worked like a finely tuned instrument, precise and perceptive. "You should not have come back here so soon," Saris said, her tone calm but firm as she noticed Kaelin's entrance. "It is dangerous." Kaelin's lips curved into a faint smile. "Danger is my companion," he said, "but I did not expect you to notice the curse so quickly." "You saw what others could not." Saris glanced at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And why should I care if you fail?" she asked, the edge in her voice more curiosity than threat. "This city is not yours alone, nor your father's. You are not the only one affected. Kalen's expression darkened, not with anger but with a storm of conflicting emotions. He had grown used to obedience, to people who feared or respected him because of his title and bloodline. Saris, however, offered neither fear nor deference. She offered insight, challenge, and a quiet defiance that unsettled him. "You are remarkable," he admitted, his voice low, "and frustrating in equal measure." "I work for the city, not for princes," Saris replied, her focus returning to her notebook. "And I trust my instincts, not your lineage." The tension between them hung in the air like charged lightning. Neither would give in, and yet both recognized the necessity of working together. The curse was growing stronger, and neither Kalen's Lycan abilities nor Saris's skill alone would be enough to stop it. Their alliance, tentative and wary, began with exploration. Together, they traced the curse to a series of ancient ruins on the outskirts of the city, a place once sacred, now abandoned and dark with neglect. The walls were etched with symbols that glowed faintly under the morning light, their meaning lost to time but their power undeniable. As they studied the runes, Kalen spoke quietly. "This is tied to my father's bloodline," he said. "The curse awakens because of the strength we carry. It tests us, challenges us, perhaps even punishes us." Saris did not flinch. She knelt to trace a symbol with her finger, murmuring observations under her breath. "This is more than a test," she said. "It is an awakening. Someone or something wants to see if you can rise above what is expected of you. And it is not just you, Prince. It touches me as well." Kalen regarded her silently, the weight of her words sinking in. "And what do you see in it?" he asked. "Opportunity," she replied. "And danger. The two often travel together." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor beneath their feet. Dust fell from the crumbling ceiling, and a low growl echoed through the ruins. The shadows seemed to move, writhing as if alive. Kalen's eyes narrowed, his instincts sharpening. Saris's hand flew to the dagger at her belt, the other brushing against a concealed blade beneath her tunic. From the darkness, figures emerged, twisted and unnatural, creatures born from the curse's magic. Their eyes glowed with a spectral light, and their movements were jagged, unnatural. They advanced slowly, testing, measuring, waiting for weakness. Kalen and Saris did not hesitate. The two of them moved together, a rhythm born of instinct and necessity. Kalen's strength and speed, honed by his Lycan heritage, met Saris's precision and skill. Each strike was deliberate, each movement anticipating the other. In the dim light of the ruins, they were not prince and waitress. They were warriors, equals in the face of danger. As the creatures fell back, Saris's voice broke the tense silence. "This curse is far stronger than it should be," she said. "It is feeding on fear, on power. It wants something from both of us." Kalen's golden eyes glimmered in the shadows. "Then we give it nothing," he said, his tone steady, commanding. "Together." For a moment, the chaos around them seemed to fade. In that shared focus, in that unspoken agreement, something deeper stirred between them, a connection that neither fully understood, yet neither could ignore. The danger had drawn them close, and with every shared glance, every coordinated movement, trust began to form, delicate and fragile. They spent the rest of the day tracing the source of the curse, moving through the city in silence punctuated by careful observation and quiet conversation. Saris noticed things Kalen would have overlooked: a whisper of magic in the marketplace, the subtle trembling of a citizen not yet asleep, the faint residue of ancient power lingering in forgotten corners. Kalen, in turn, used his abilities to shield them from immediate threats, his senses alert to any movement, any sound that suggested danger. By nightfall, they had reached the heart of the city, a square where the air seemed thick with magic. The citizens gathered, watching the two of them with a mixture of awe and fear. Kalen and Saris moved to the center, where the ground pulsed faintly with dark energy. Symbols, similar to those in the ruins, glowed beneath their feet, spreading across the stone like living veins. Kalen knelt, placing his hands on the symbols. "It calls to me," he whispered, "but it does not belong to me." Sarah stepped beside him, her hand brushing against his. It was unintentional, but the spark of contact lingered longer than either expected. "Then we face it together," she said softly. "We do not let it own either of us." For a long moment they simply stood there, side by side, feeling the pulse of the curse and the weight of what they had begun. They were not yet allies, not yet friends, not yet more, but the foundation had been laid. They were drawn together by necessity, by danger, and by a quiet, unspoken understanding that their fates were intertwined. The night deepened, and the city slept uneasily. Somewhere in the shadows, forces watched, waiting. The curse was not done, and the true challenge had only just begun. Kalen looked at Saris, and for the first time he allowed himself to wonder what it would mean if he failed, and if she failed. Cliffhanger. A faint, chilling laugh echoed through the empty streets. Both Kalen and Saris turned toward it, senses alert. The curse was awakening something far older than either had imagined, and the shadows that moved were not entirely bound to the city. Whatever had begun in the ruins was now coming for them, and neither could face it alone. The moon hung low over the city, pale and watchful, casting silver shadows across the cobblestones. The streets were empty, save for the occasional flicker of lantern light. Saris moved quietly, her cloak brushing the damp ground as she followed Kalen. He had insisted she stay close. The curse was far from over, and its next phase was more dangerous than anything they had yet faced. Kalen's senses were heightened, the golden hue of his eyes reflecting the silver light. The events of the previous day had left him restless, a storm of thoughts twisting inside him. Saris had proven herself far more capable than he had imagined, precise, daring, and fearless. Yet her presence stirred something unexpected within him, something beyond respect. Her calm determination was a challenge, a riddle he could not solve, and one that gnawed at him relentlessly. "Do you ever rest?" Kalen asked quietly, breaking the silence. His voice carried neither accusation nor mockery, only curiosity. Saris did not turn to face him immediately. "Rest is dangerous when the city sleeps under a curse," she replied, her voice even. "I've learned to keep moving. To wait is to become prey." Kalen's lips pressed into a thin line. She was right, of course. He was used to hunting and protecting, to relying on his instincts alone, yet Saris forced him to reconsider every step, every thought. He had never encountered anyone who moved through the world with such quiet authority. They reached the square at the heart of the city, where the symbols from the ruins had spread like veins of dark energy across the stone. The pulse of magic beneath their feet was stronger now, vibrating through the air with an almost tangible weight. Kalen knelt, placing a hand on the ground, feeling the unnatural rhythm of the curse. "It feeds on fear," he said, his voice low, "but it also feeds on power. It wants something from me and perhaps from you." Saris knelt beside him, tracing the glowing lines with careful fingers. "It is testing us," she said, "seeing how far we will go, seeing how strong we are together or apart." Kalen's gaze shifted to hers. "Together," he repeated, the word heavy with meaning. It was more than a statement of intent. It was a challenge, a promise, and something else, a fragile acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. Before either could act further, the shadows stirred. Figures emerged from the darkness, more monstrous than the creatures from the ruins, their forms twisting and unnatural, eyes glowing with malevolence. The curse had manifested its true guardians, and their presence was suffocating, oppressive. Kalen rose, his muscles coiled like a spring. Saris mirrored him instantly, blades drawn, eyes sharp. The air between them thrummed with tension, not just of danger but of something unspoken, a magnetic pull neither fully understood. The first figure lunged at Saris, fast and jagged, but she moved with fluid precision, sidestepping and striking with a force that sent the creature sprawling. Kalen intercepted another, his strength overwhelming, the sheer power of his Lycan blood evident in every blow. They fought in perfect unison, their movements synchronized despite never having trained together. Each glance, each subtle shift, carried silent communication. The creatures fell back, yet their numbers seemed endless. The curse was not just a test of strength, but of endurance, of trust, and of the connection forming between them. After the last creature was dispatched, they stood in silence, breathing heavily. Saris wiped a thin line of sweat from her brow, her eyes meeting Kaelin's. In that look, unspoken acknowledgment passed between them. They had survived, but the danger was far from over. "You cannot face this alone," Saris said softly. "I cannot face it alone. The curse is stronger than anything we have encountered, and it is far from finished." Kaelin nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we do not face it alone. But there is more at play here than magic alone. Someone is orchestrating this." As they spoke, a sudden tremor shook the square. The stones beneath their feet cracked, glowing veins spreading wider and deeper. The shadows gathered once more, darker, sharper, more purposeful. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. He had felt this presence before, a command, an authority, a power that dwarfed even his own. "Your father," Saris whispered, recognition dawning. "The Lycan king." Kaelin's lips tightened. He had known the curse was tied to his family, but he had not expected direct involvement. The Lycan king's influence was vast and his methods harsh. Kaelin had always lived in the shadow of his father's power, a constant tension between obedience and desire for independence. Now, that tension threatened to spill into the city, dragging Saris into the center of it. Suddenly, the largest shadow detached from the group, moving with deliberate intent. It stepped into the silver moonlight, revealing a form that was both human and other, a figure cloaked in darkness, eyes glimmering with ancient power. Kaelin recognized him immediately. His father, the Lycan king himself, risen from the shadows with authority that demanded attention. "You have grown bold," the king's voice rumbled, deep and commanding. "And you, child of strangers," he said, turning to Saris, "you dare meddle in affairs beyond your understanding." Saris did not falter. She stepped forward, standing beside Kaelin, her gaze unwavering. "I do not meddle," she said. "I act to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If that is beyond understanding, I accept it." The Lycan king's eyes narrowed, and Kaelin felt the weight of his father's scrutiny, a pressure that tested both his strength and his resolve. The king's presence was more than physical, it was a force, a command that bent the air and demanded obedience. Kaelin clenched his fists, feeling the old tension rising within him. "You would defy me?" the king asked, voice low and dangerous. Kaelin met his gaze, unflinching. "I do not defy you, I act with what is right." The king's lips curved into a thin, cruel smile. "You will learn obedience one way or another," he said. "And you," his gaze flicked to Saris, "you will pay for your interference." Saris's hand tightened on her blade. "I will not bow," she said quietly, each word deliberate and unwavering. "Not to fear, not to power, not even to you." For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a motion almost too fast to follow, the king vanished into shadow, leaving only the echo of his presence. The air seemed colder, heavier, as though the city itself had been marked by his passing. Kaelin exhaled slowly, feeling the tension leave his shoulders, only to be replaced by a deeper unease. "He will return," he said, voice low, "and he will test us further. He does not forgive easily." Saris nodded, understanding the implication. "Then we must be ready," she said. "And we must trust each other, more than we have before." The storm of emotions within Kaelin intensified. He had grown used to control, to being the stronger, the protector, the dominant force in any situation. Yet with Saris he felt something new, a pull he could not name, a connection that challenged him, frustrated him, and yet drew him closer. She was a mirror to his strength, a challenge to his ego, and a spark he could not ignore. "You are unlike anyone I have met," he admitted finally, voice barely above a whisper. "You test me in ways I did not expect." Saris allowed herself a faint smile. "And you test me," she replied. "But perhaps that is what we need, a challenge, a reason to grow stronger." Together, the night deepened around them and the city slept uneasily. Shadows moved at the edges of vision, the curse still pulsing beneath the stones, waiting, testing. Kaelin and Saris stood side by side, the faint touch of their hands brushing for a fleeting moment. Neither pulled away, though the spark lingered longer than either expected. It was a moment of quiet intimacy, fragile yet undeniable, born not of desire alone, but of shared danger, shared purpose, and the beginnings of trust. They had survived the night together, and in doing so had discovered something neither had anticipated. A bond forged in the crucible of fear, strength, and mutual respect. And yet, as the first light of dawn touched the rooftops, a shadow fell over the square. From the distance, a figure watched, cloaked in darkness, its presence silent but unmistakable. The curse was not done, and the forces behind it were far stronger than either Kaelin or Saris could yet comprehend. Cliffhanger, the shadow moved closer, its eyes gleaming with intent. Saris felt a shiver run down her spine, sensing that the true trial was only just beginning, and that the next challenge would test not only their skill but their hearts and their trust in each other. The city lay in uneasy silence. Dawn had painted the streets in pale gold, but the light did little to pierce the shadows that clung stubbornly to corners and alleyways. Saris and Kaelin moved together through the square, senses alert, hearts pounding in sync. The curse that had begun as a whisper now roared like a storm, alive, testing, threatening. Kaelin's golden eyes glimmered with tension and determination. The presence that had haunted the city through the night had not moved far. His father, the Lycan king, had orchestrated the trials, testing not just his strength, but his judgment, his restraint, and his heart. Kaelin knew that failure was unacceptable, not for himself and not for Saris. Saris's hand brushed against his, just for a moment, a silent reassurance. Their bond, tentative but powerful, had grown through shared danger, whispered strategy, and mutual recognition of strength. Neither could face the coming trial alone. The ruins at the center of the city pulsed with the dark energy of the curse. The air was thick with tension, the stones glowing faintly beneath their feet, veins of magic spreading outward. Saris knelt briefly, tracing the symbols, feeling the rhythm of the curse's heartbeat. "It is feeding on fear," she said softly, "on doubt, on what we hold inside ourselves, but it is also a reflection of power, and it wants to see what we can overcome." Kaelin's jaw tightened. "Then we show it we are stronger than fear," he said, "stronger than doubt. And we do it together." Their moment of resolve was interrupted as shadows surged from the corners of the square. Figures shaped by the curse moved with unnatural speed and purpose. The creatures' eyes glowed like coals, reflecting the dark magic that had given them life. The city's air trembled with tension. Kaelin shifted, instincts ready. Saris mirrored his stance, blades drawn, eyes sharp. The first shadow lunged at them, but they moved in perfect coordination, each strike, block, and step anticipating the other. They were no longer prince and mortal. They were allies, equals, warriors intertwined by fate. The creatures fell back, only to be replaced by an even darker presence, the Lycan king himself. His eyes, amber and unyielding, glimmered with authority and power. He stepped into the square, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath his command. "You dare oppose me?" he demanded, voice echoing like thunder. "You, child of my blood, and you, mortal who dares enter my domain?" Kaelin met his father's gaze, unflinching. "I do not oppose you," he said firmly. "I oppose injustice, I oppose fear, and I protect those who cannot protect themselves." The Lycan king's gaze flicked to Saris, appraising her. "You are brave, yes," he said, "but bravery alone does not make one strong. Strength is more than skill. It is wisdom, restraint, and courage in the face of what must be endured." Ceres's grip on her blade tightened. "Then we will endure," she said quietly. "We will not bow, we will not falter." The king's lips curved into a thin, unreadable smile. "Then show me," he said, and with that the shadows surged forward once more. Kalen and Ceres moved as one, a synchronized force of strength, speed, and precision. Each strike was deliberate, each defense calculated. Ceres's movements were fluid, almost dance-like, and Kalen's were powerful and swift, fueled by the blood of his Lycan lineage. Together, they pushed back the darkness, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. In the midst of the battle, Kalen caught Ceres off guard with a glance, a fleeting moment of connection. Her eyes met his, and in that brief exchange, words were unnecessary. Trust had been forged through fire and shadow, and in that trust lay the power to stand against even the darkest forces. The Lycan king watched silently, testing, weighing, observing every move. This was more than combat. It was a trial of heart and spirit. He wanted to see if Kalen could rise above the arrogance and entitlement of his birth, if he could balance power with compassion, and if he could respect strength beyond his own. The battle reached its peak as the shadows condensed into a massive, swirling form, a physical manifestation of the curse's intent. It towered over them, shifting and writhing, a storm of darkness made flesh. Kalen and Ceres stepped forward, side by side, unflinching. "Together," Kalen whispered, a vow and a command all in one. Ceres nodded, and together they advanced. The clash was intense, strength against darkness, precision against chaos. Kalen's power surged, controlled by his discipline, while Ceres's skill cut through the illusions and the shadows with unerring accuracy. Each movement was a test of will, each strike a statement. They would not be broken. The curse's form recoiled, faltered, and finally, with a flash of light that rippled through the square, it shattered into countless fragments of shadow. The energy that had gripped the city dissipated, leaving silence in its wake. The citizens, who had been watching from the edges of the square, emerged cautiously, eyes wide with awe. Kalen breathed heavily, his golden eyes softening as he looked at Ceres. She was bloodied, tired, yet unbowed, her eyes reflecting the quiet strength that had carried them both through the trial. The Lycan king stepped forward, the shadows around him fading into nothingness. He regarded Kalen with a long, measured gaze. "You have learned much," he said finally, "strength without arrogance, courage without recklessness, and loyalty to something greater than power itself." Kalen bowed his head slightly, a sign of respect that was not born of fear. "I have learned from her," he said simply, his gaze falling on Ceres. "She has taught me more about strength and trust than I could have imagined." Ceres met his gaze, her lips curving into a faint, tired smile. "And I have learned that strength is not only about survival," she said softly. "It is about trust, courage, and the willingness to protect what is precious." The Lycan king nodded slowly, a rare gesture of approval. "Then you have both grown," he said. "The curse was never meant to destroy. It was meant to test, to reveal the depth of your character. You have passed." For the first time, Kalen felt a sense of liberation. The weight of expectation, of inheritance of the Lycan legacy, had been tempered by trial and trust. He turned to Ceres, gratitude and admiration in his eyes. "We did this together," he said, his voice low but steady. "Yes," Ceres agreed, "together." They stood side by side in the square, the first light of dawn warming their faces. The city, once shadowed by fear and curse, now seemed alive with possibility. The ruins that had tested them no longer pulsed with dark energy. They were quiet, a testament to the strength of courage, partnership, and heart. Kalen reached for her hand, this time intentionally, fingers brushing against hers. Ceres did not pull away. In that simple gesture, unspoken words passed between them, respect, trust, and the spark of something deeper, something neither had fully understood until this moment. "You are remarkable," Kalen said quietly, the weight of his words sincere. "Not just in skill, but in heart." Sarah's eyes softened. "And you are more than I expected," she replied. "Not just in power, but in courage." For a long moment they stood in silence, hands brushing, eyes locked. The city around them seemed to breathe with them, the morning light glinting off the stone, the air filled with a sense of new beginnings. Yet neither forgot the lesson of the night. Power alone was meaningless without wisdom, strength without restraint could destroy, and courage without trust was fragile. Together, they had faced darkness and emerged stronger, not just as warriors but as partners in destiny. The Lycan king watched them one last time before fading into shadow, leaving them to the quiet of the morning. His approval, unspoken yet palpable, was a rare gift, a recognition that Kaelin had grown beyond mere inheritance into true leadership, tempered by love, loyalty, and respect. Sarah squeezed Kaelin's hand lightly, a silent promise. "No matter what comes next," she said, "we face it together." Kaelin nodded, golden eyes reflecting both determination and something softer, warmer. "Together," he echoed, the word carrying weight, promise, and hope. And as the city awoke fully, the curse broken and the shadows gone, Kaelin and Sarah stepped forward, side by side. The trials had ended, but the journey of trust, love, and courage was only beginning. Theirs was a bond forged in darkness, tempered in danger, and now shining in the light of a new dawn. Final cliffhanger. In the distance, beyond the city walls, the faint howl of wolves carried on the wind, a reminder that challenges would always return. But together, Kaelin and Sarah knew they could face whatever shadows lay ahead. The world had tested them, but it had also given them a gift, each other.